This is Tenacity Rules from Forbes Books. Conversations with trailblazers and groundbreakers who have inspired and encouraged ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Here's Denise Brinkmeyer.
If you're like me and watched the amazing Netflix docuseries The Most Hated Man on the Internet all in one night when you were supposed to go to sleep 3 hours earlier, you're probably a big fan of this week's guest. Her name is Dr. Charlotte Laws, and she has been known as a notorious party crasher, an animal rights advocate, actress, and now anti-revenge porn activist. Charlotte, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. We have so much to discuss in a short amount of time. And before we get into the story behind the most hated man on the internet, I wanted to start back at the beginning, like the rest of your life, because you've had a very interesting start. Weren't you born in a car?
I was, because my mom was not in labor very long, so they couldn't make it to the hospital. So I was born in the car, but they drove up to the hospital, and then all the nurses and doctors, everybody poured out and came to the car to get me. But I was adopted, so that second they took me into the hospital, and my birth parents never saw me again until I tracked them down in my 20s, 25 years later. So yeah, that was my rough start, I guess you could say. And then 2 months later, I was adopted by a family in Atlanta, and not the greatest childhood, I must say.
Oh, gosh, we could go there. I'm such a big fan of, I don't know if you know the show Long Lost Family. My husband, I watch that every night because it makes me feel happy. So much that's on TV leaves me with such an angry or negative emotion. I try to watch something that is uplifting, and I always am so happy, when people feel fulfilled or get the thing that they're looking for in their life. So a rough start, born in the car, and then at one time, I think you were listed as the fourth most notorious party crusher in the world. How did you get started doing that?
I think it was partly because I had, such a bad childhood, and my dad was verbally abusive. My mom committed suicide. My brother was killed in a car accident. It was just a really bad, and I was a black sheep of the family and the community. And it was a very racist family and a very racist community in upper class Atlanta, which is where I was raised. And so I just kind of reached out to the entertainment industry. I could see on TV that they were very open-minded and very accepting, and they wore all these wonderful flashy clothes, which I loved, which was, of course, for a debutante like me, that was forbidden. That was a horrible thing. So I just gravitated towards it, and I found that the entertainment industry was like one big family. But to get to these people, a lot of times you have to get past security. So I had to figure out kind of how to maneuver that in order to become friends with all these people. And I figured it out and just got to know a lot of people in entertainment, and party crashing became a tool. Back then it was fun when you're 18 years old, but as I got older, I realized it was also a tool for lobbying for legislation, for getting people signed on to nonprofit causes. I mean, you want to get in touch with the movers and shakers of society, and normally rich people are the only ones who have access to senators or presidents or whoever it may be. And they get to do their lobbying because they pay $100,000 for a ticket to go to a fundraiser, and the ordinary person doesn't have that access. So I realized with party crashing, I can get access. I can get celebrity interviews for a book. I can, lobby for whatever cause, whether it's revenge porn or something else, or, sell my beaded clothes at one point. I was doing one-of-a-kind beaded clothes. So it was good for business. It was good for, helping causes. It was good for whatever it might be. And I saw a lot of benefits to it.
Looking back on that, is there a party or an event or a celebrity that stands out in your mind as one of the best times that you crashed a party?
Well, one reason I kind of got started too is I had a crush on Tom Jones, who is a singer, Sir Tom Jones now. And so he actually ended up being my first boyfriend. And so I went through a lot of maneuvers to get to him when I was 18, almost 19 years old. And I ended up dating him for 3 years. And so that was, really meaningful to me. And I had very low self-esteem before that. I felt like I was ugly and not very smart. And, I just had very low no confidence really. And when I started dating him, my confidence just really shot up. It was really amazing. So I would say that was the most amazing thing for me as far as that kind of thing goes.
Oh, that's really awesome. Charlotte, I want to talk about what you were saying about support for causes, because I understand you're a pretty passionate animal activist. Didn't your hen run for president or something like that?
Yes, I am an animal activist, and my hen ran for vice president with a dog from Tennessee. So there was already this dog, and this was like, they were kind of doing it as a serious write-in campaign, which was obviously pretty funny, but that's what this guy from Tennessee and his dog were doing. And so a lot of my social media fans, lobbied him to put my chicken on the ticket. And they finally agreed. And so May Poulet, my hen, was a vice presidential candidate on the ticket. It was called the Bully Party is what he named it. And it was great because it was a way for us to get out animal issues, to get, have articles in the press about animal issues. We also talked about the importance of independent candidates and getting away from a two-party system, which is something that I've always thought was quite toxic. And so we were able to really get our message out through this publicity stunt, if you want to call it that, with my chicken and his dog. And that is who I voted for that year. I voted for my chicken. But unfortunately, somebody named Obama won. Yes.
Maybe we need another stunt like that for this next election. What do you think?
Maybe so.
Well, your bio says that you've had over 30 jobs, and I think we're a little kindred on that. I'm exploring a lot of different areas where you can serve, and you hold multiple degrees, and you've written several books. You've worked in politics and entertainment. But I came to learn about you when I watched the Netflix documentary, The Most Hated Man on the Internet. And I thought right then that I needed to have you on this podcast, my podcast, Tenacity Rules. I thought, man, if there is someone who defines tenacity, it is Charlotte Laws. After watching the documentary, can you tell me how you became the Erin Brockovich of revenge porn? You first heard the name of Hunter Moore when?
Well, my daughter had taken some pictures of herself in her room, and one of them was topless, and her cell phone got full, so she had sent them to her email to save them. And then she was hacked several months later, and then her topless picture was uploaded to this website, isanyoneup.com, along with her name, her city, her social media link. And she found out she was at her waitress job, and she called me in tears, completely freaked out. And that's the first time I'd ever heard of revenge porn or Hunter Moore or this website. And I knew that obviously a topless picture online is not going to just go away on its own. It's going to circulate. It's going to end up on other websites. And so I knew time was of the essence, and I knew I would have to, get this down. My daughter was just too distraught, and I could tell that there's no way she was going to be able to really handle the situation. So it was going to be up to me to do it.
How old was she when this happened?
She was 24.
Do you think that even today, I know this happened back in 2010, we'll talk more about the amazing things you've done. Do you think even now, all these years later, that young people understand how dangerous posting something on the internet is?
Well, I mean, the internet is kind of dangerous in a lot of ways. I mean, it's, there's any information you put out there, you just have to realize that it could be forever. It could get into any hands at all. So obviously you need to, be secure with what you post, be secure with passwords, cover the little camera on your or the little, little hole on your computer that has the camera so that somebody can't like hack into you and then be watching you and filming you. I mean, there are a lot of things that can happen with the internet. You have to be careful of who you're communicating with. It could be a stranger. It could be a 60-year-old man who's pretending to be a 14-year-old girl. So, you just never know. And it's, I think that everybody needs to be educated on the hazards with respect to the internet. It can be great because obviously you have all these connections and, you can promote things and there's a lot of positives about it, but there's also a lot of negative about it. So I think that pictures are the same as any other kind of information is, you just have to be educated. But I don't subscribe to the idea of telling people that you shouldn't take a topless picture or a nude picture of yourself because to me that's victim blaming. And I think people should be able to take pictures of themselves if they want. I think the problem is the distribution, and that's why the laws are so important to curb that kind of activity.
Absolutely, and I hope I want to be clear about that I don't think that we want to blame victims. Everybody has the right, and your daughter's story and her talking in the documentary about why she took those pictures, that there's nothing wrong with that at all. I just wanted to make sure, because sometimes I think when kids, I call them kids because of my age, but when young people, when you say the internet, sometimes I don't think they realize apps as well. They think Snapchat, and I don't know if you watch the show Catfish. I've binge watched 8 seasons recently. but even, sharing pictures through an app with someone, you certainly have the right to do it, but you really don't know who's on the other side or who can intercept those pictures.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, I mean, that's why education is important, and that people understand that they shouldn't just be too trusting of the internet, and they have to understand that there are hazards out there. And yeah, I agree with you. It's very important that people know that.
When your daughter was hacked, and I'm not going to give too much away today about the documentary because I really think people should read it. I was fascinated. I really was trying to go to sleep early that night, and I ended up watching everything and staying up late because it was really so fascinating to me. And I'll be honest, I guess because of the age I am, I wasn't even aware of this site. I didn't know anything about it. I think I was, older and certainly didn't interact with it in my circles. But when your daughter came to you asking for help, I know your husband's a lawyer, and at some point you reached out to him, but you didn't stop there with, help from a lawyer husband. Why didn't you stop when he said, well, I'll send them a letter, or, take this kind of action?
Well, first of all, I started reaching out to other victims. And the reason I did that is because my daughter went on the site and saw that one of her friends had a topless picture that was posted. And she called her friend, and the friend said she had been hacked. So here I am. I've never heard of revenge porn before. I've never heard of this website. I only know 2 people on the site, and they were both hacked. So my view was, there must be a hacking scheme. So that's why I decided to do my own survey, and I started reaching out and contacting victims on the site. So I ended up contacting 40 people who were posted within the 2-week period of my daughter, and it was very hard getting in touch with them because I was scared to use electronics. I was scared to use email. I was scared to use social media because I didn't know if the hacker might be on there. So I did all this roundabout stuff. Everything had to be done by the phone. And I would sometimes just have, I'd look at their last name and have their city, and I'd have to call somebody with the same last name and say, are you related to this person? Can you have them call me? It was very difficult getting in touch. But I found out that 40% of the 40 people had been hacked, and 12% of them were morphed porn. In other words, it was their head put on a porn star's body. So, there seemed to be a lot of illegal activity going on with this website at that point. But, I did know within a few days, I mean, I knew there were no laws with regards to revenge porn. I knew that there were lots of victims out there, and I knew something had to be done. So to me, it really wasn't a question of just my daughter. It was like, no, we need to protect all the victims. We need to get the site down. Need to get laws passed. I mean, it was kind of a mission, really, probably from like 2 or 3 days into it, to be honest. But my husband, we didn't tell right away because my daughter was embarrassed and she didn't want anyone to know. So I was the only one who was allowed to know, even though lots of her friends found out and everybody passed around her photo at her job, her waitress job. And the assistant manager told her, I could get you fired. And, so she was getting a lot of negative feedback from people that she knew. And she was getting raunchy phone calls and being contacted by strange guys. And even the porn star Ron Jeremy contacted her and wanted to, quote, talk business. Yeah, he said he was with Howard Stern, and they were supposedly at the Adult Entertainment Convention in Las Vegas. So anyway, so she was really upset and just, wanted that picture down as quickly as possible. And finally, she agreed that we could tell my husband, because I had a couple of conversations with Hunter's attorney at this point, and I didn't feel he was taking me seriously. He kept saying, well, I have sympathy, but there's nothing I can do. And, that kind of was his attitude. And so finally we told my husband. My husband laughed and said, this is no big deal. It'll go away if you just ignore it, and said he didn't want to get involved. And finally, I got him to let me write a legal letter, which he signed, but that didn't do anything. And then finally, he agreed to have a conversation because he got so fed up. So he agreed to talk to the attorney, and he basically just said, if it's not down in 30 minutes, I'm going into court. That's it. I've just had it. And it was down. So Kayla's picture was down, and he wanted me to stop, and my daughter actually wanted me to stop as well. And but obviously,
she did.
Other victims. Yeah, she wanted me to stop as well. They both did. Anyway, but I'm just very into persistence and into causes. I always have been, and this was it was kind of like prejudice to me. I mean, I've always causes have always been related to prejudice. Mostly that's what I've, embraced is fighting for civil rights, fighting for animal rights, fighting for gay rights, fighting for women's rights with regards to revenge porn, because most of the victims were females, not all, but it was kind of more of a misogynistic thing. And there was so much hatred towards females on that website. And so I just continued to, pursue my battle, and it became very scary with death threats and computer viruses and even a stalker at our house, which isn't in the documentary. I have no idea why they left that out.
Really?
I thought it was kind of big, house? But we had a guy at our house sitting in a white car, and I had been told by the computer expert who would come to get viruses off my computer. He said, beware of cars parked on the street, because if someone wants to hack into your network, they're going to need to be near your house. And so my daughter saw the car the first night, but she didn't tell me till the next day. And she didn't know what the technician had said, so I couldn't accuse her of paranoia. And we also live on this dead-end street where there's never any cars, like a cul-de-sac. And then the next night, she comes, she says, Mom, that car is outside again. And this was way late in the story. This is like a year into it, and I was super fed up. I had just had it. So I marched out to the car, and my daughter's running behind me going, Mom, what are you going to do? Mom, what are you going to do? And I march up to this guy, and he's doing something in his lap, and he's like a young guy in his 20s, probably, blonde curly hair. He looks up at me. I said, may I help you? And he just freaked out. He turned on his car. He zoomed away. He almost hit my neighbor's wall. And I feel like somebody who was innocent would have said, oh, I'm just waiting for your neighbor. Or, they would have said something. It wouldn't have zoomed away like that. So, that was our stalker experience. And so I did go to the hardware store and got locks for the gates. And we actually slept with metal bars under the bed. My daughter and I did as well. So it got pretty scary at one point because we were being, or at least I was being attacked by Hunter's followers, and he had some pretty rabid followers.
Oh, in the documentary, some of the things they said, shocked that you had the resolve to continue with the type of language that they were using.
Yeah.
And I was also intrigued by the concept of white hat hackers and the role they played in your mission to stop Hunter Moore. And we'll get into that in the second part of my talk with Dr. Charlotte Laws. But right now we have to take a break. We'll get into that and talk about what the government is doing to stop revenge porn.
It's just not consistent from one state to another, and it's very confusing. So I think we definitely need a federal law, and a lot of countries do have laws, so I don't know why we have such a problem getting something passed here.
This has been Tenacity Rules with Denise Brinkmeyer. To connect with Denise and find out how ordinary